The Legend of Monkey Island brings the iconic locations, the beloved characters, and that unique charm and humour of the Monkey Island world to Sea of Thieves. It's told across 3 tall tales, and that will see you adventuring across Melee Island, Monkey Island in a fully explorable, immersive way. I think it's impossible to think about pirates in the gaming space and not think about Monkey Island. I think that incredible world and set of characters, it has meant so much to us on Sea of Thieves. You know, the chance to play in that toy box and create a new story and bring a new version of Monkey Island to life is, well, honestly, it means the world to us.
Ahoy there, fancy pants.
Growing up, Monkey Island was a huge part of our kind of gaming history, alongside other games like Day of the Tentacle and Sam and Max and all those kind of adventures. But Monkey Island was, so good I had a poster of it on my wall.
The Monkey Island series it's unique in the way that it's so irreverent and it's goofy. It's a pirate adventure, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of pirate adventures out there where you'll mess around with, say, a rubber chicken with a pulley in the middle. It lets you have kind of that swashbuckling adventure, but at the same time, it's just charming and funny and unusually witty.
I had quite an affinity with the original games, playing them with my brother when I was younger. So when I heard that we were going to be working on kind of our own version, bringing that story to life in the Sea of Thieves world, I was super excited.
I played it on the Amiga 500, and it's just really special to me.
Monkey Island obviously previously appeared in Sea of Thieves when we did A Pirate's Life. And there was that lovely little Easter egg where you discovered that Guybrush and Elaine had visited the Sea of Thieves. And it was like, well, what happened next? And the idea of continuing that story and seeing, how they interacted with our kind of rich pirate world.
So our story begins when the pirate lord of the Sea of Thieves invites Guybrush and Elaine to spend their honeymoon deep in the Caribbean. But the pirate couple seemingly have never arrived. Following in their wake is Captain Kate Capsize, who's a character from the second Monkey Island game. And she's got a vendetta against Guybrush. She wants her revenge for her false imprisonment from those classic games. And she introduces this story that sees you pick up the trail to go find the missing pirate couple. One of my favourite moments is right at the very start of the first tale, when you emerge out of the fog and you see Melee Island and the banners come in and you hear the theme music begin. You see a little shooting star. And it's that moment from the very first game, but you're living it.
It's a really quite expansive island. Like, it's one of the biggest ones that we have. In fact, it may be the biggest. The way that it is revealed to players as they approach it is really quite grand and sort of makes you pause and go, wow, oh my God, like that's nothing like what we already have.
For the fans, they need to have that, that's Monkey Island sound. So really trying to hit that moment. So steel drums, pan flute, Monkey Island.
For us, with The Legend of Monkey Island, we wanted to be authentic to the original. So you can almost position the camera in the right place and almost get that one-to-one comparison with the original. But there was that extra pressure of, there's also the bits in between that you don't see in those 2D games.
So we really had to start thinking about like all these iconic locations. How can we make sure that they still would be recognizable to our players? We would make these key art illustrations, but we would make them specifically from the perspective of our players. That way the world team would have a reference point from Sea of Thieves, but also at the same time we could compare it to the side-scrolling perspective from Monkey Island.
We've really wanted to make sure we replicate those original images you see from the original games.
It has been challenging, particularly on Melee Island, because some of the buildings, they look great in 2D, but when you think about how they would actually line up in 3D, there may be a window that just wouldn't make any sense in our game. So it's been quite difficult for us to translate it into 3D, and that has meant that we've needed to tweak little bits of it. But I think overall it's been really quite true to what was in the original
One of the examples of these images was actually in front of the House of Mojo, because you've got all the streets and the pavement, and it gave us a really good perspective of figuring out how all the cobblestone would look like and what the colors would look like.
So for the International House of Mojo, I used this Chinese bamboo flute. So it gives like a really nice overblown effect, but obviously it's actually quite hard to play just because I'm not a woodwind player. I'm sure a woodwind player out there would be like, easy peasy, give it to me. And then, so if you ask me to play this live, I can give it a crack, but it probably won't be as good as the recording.
My favourite, if I had to choose, would have to be the Scum Bar. That moment when you open the door and you walk through and the pirate's spinning on the anchor chandelier and you hear the music and you see the pirate leaders at the back. We had to meet expectations and effectively blow people away in that moment.
The Scum Bar ambience was actually recorded from scratch. So all the little nuggets of audio that you hear are scattered around the Scum Bar. People cheering, coughing, I think there's even the sound of someone throwing up in there, are actually done by our very own devs.
I also added some like occlusion when the door's shut, so when you open the door for the first time, you really feel like you're stepping into that environment for the first time. It's such a cool moment, and for me, it's really just that key initial, holy, I'm on Melee Island sort of thing. That's really cool.
All of the audio within the Legend of the Monkey Island is actually original, but we tried to stay close to the actual audio language of the original game. It's very quirky, very humorous. We've essentially just been keeping that in mind to ensure that we'll stay on the same lines as the original game and make it fit within the living, breathing world of Sea of Thieves.
So in the Scum Bar, it's interactive. So you've got like sort of 3 sections of the bar. You've got like the main bar, the pirate leaders, and the kitchen. So in the main bar, it's like the full-on harmonium, raucous, the biggest sort of full-fat version of the Scum Bar tune. And then it goes to the pirate leader, so it goes a little bit more kind of snooty, perhaps, because it's got a little bit of harpsichord and some sort of like ornament, sort of like trills and things. It's quite sort of fancy. And then it sort of goes to the kitchen, and it's really sort of pared back to just like minimal bass and like a tuba part. But it's, yeah, it all works sort of seamlessly as you go through one to the other.
We've got the town centre, and that holds a very different architectural style to what you've seen even on Port Merrick. The church is a good example because it's your classical, almost Gothic stone church where you've got these big stained glass windows. And what's really interesting with those is we've got the light pouring through and casting the colours of those stained windows onto the floor.
When we were looking at the church, we kind of realized that the stained glass windows on the inside weren't the same stained glass windows on the outside. And because we're a 3D game, we can't really get away with that. So what we ended up doing was that we kind of had to create a new art language, design language for these stained glass windows. So we could unite the overall look of all these windows, but at the same time, still make sure that these windows are still iconic and recognizable to the players.
Melee Island is set at night time. It's a static lighting setup, which means we can really compose what we want to show to the player. We're able to really push the dynamics, push the atmosphere, and really sell that Melee Island feel.
Exploring Melee Island, the town, solving puzzles there, we want that to be completed in different orders. So based on how you want to explore the town, how you want to inhabit these iconic locations, you get to solve the puzzles in your own way. And I think that's a big part of what we're doing and why these tall tales are uniquely different to what we've done before. And beyond that, I think a big part of enjoying Monkey Island is interacting with those really charming and beloved characters.
It's been really fun actually translating these characters to Sea of Thieves, especially with how beloved they are. They all have like really interesting personalities, and it's been really fun to animate that. But a lot of them are so quirky that they've been really interesting to try and translate them into the Sea of Thieves, and it's been a bit complicated doing that, and it's presented a lot of challenges.
Even like with Kate interacting with the Pirate Lord, she's quite a sassy character. So seeing that interaction and having that bit of comedy behind it is quite fun.
What I want is someone willing to drag that pirate pretender back to reality. Then he can have a long and meaningful conversation with the sole of my boot.
The Monkey Island series features a whole host of characters with like distinct personalities, and we wanted to capture that within their voiceovers. Every line of dialogue is voiced, and this gives us an opportunity to really capture the personalities of each character.
Well, nobody ever said pirates make great architects.
Not only was it amazing to pull in some of the original voice actors, such as the voice actor for Guybrush, and also voice actors that have been involved in different games throughout the series, you really feel like you're getting to know those characters. You really hear all their little inflections, their personalities come through, all of those kinds of lovely details that you wouldn't otherwise get.
The legend begins right here on Melee Island, on the day of my arrival.
You know, it's so odd for me because at this point in my life, Guybrush has been with me longer than he hasn't. I mean, I've been voicing the character for over 25 years now, and I was a tremendous fan of the character for a good 7 or 8 years before that. Guybrush is relatable because he has sort of a naivete about him. You know, he is in some ways as new to this world as the player is. And he is trying to find his way through this crazy anachronistic piratey world as much as you are. And it makes him, I think, especially relatable.
I like to say that he's got this like golden retriever energy. So these are the type of like personality traits that we try to hone in on and just implement into our animations when we build his like gestures and animations.
Guybrush, I think is perfect for the game. It's quite simple in his design. A lot of the visual style of Guybrush was, I think, in the original ideas around Sea of Thieves anyway. Having to translate him for the game for Sea of Thieves was a natural fit.
The cutscene that stood out to me the most was where players meet him in the mansion. It's probably one of the longest cutscenes that we've done animation-wise, and it was all fully bespoke. So the animator was working with thousands of frames of animation. And on top of that, you know, Guybrush had his props, the Elaine doll, the LeChuck doll, which he was interacting with and throwing about. So it was quite a complex cutscene. Guybrush, I think, is the funniest character. So seeing those bits of comedy in that cutscene, it's just fun seeing that in the Sea of Thieves world.
I cornered LeChuck and gave him the biggest spritzing of his afterlife. I kept the bottle. It's one of my most treasured possessions.
I think Monkey Island in general really pushed us to really introduce a lot of new elements into the world. I think, for example, if you look at LeChuck's Ghost Pirate crew, they don't really look like anything we haven't seen of these before. So we ended up making a completely new shader, and the character and the tech team did such an amazing job bringing that to life.
I think LeChuck is probably my favorite one, just because I think within Sea of Thieves we haven't had a character that is that large. He has that presence about him. He's quite a top-heavy character, and he has a really strong silhouette. It makes him quite imposing, but he's also got this kind of classic maniacal cartoon villain characteristic about him. And when you add the voiceover on top of him, he's just a really, really fun character to animate.
And once this burning blade is restored, those waters will be mine to rule as I see fit.
I'm hoping that the players really like what we've done with the music. It's been a real sort of labour of love for us. We love these melodies, these earworms. They just get stuck in your head, and I've just really enjoyed bringing the sort of two worlds together, and I really hope they like it.
Every project we work on, we try to push what we can do, and I think the Monkey Island update, I think it's just going to blow people's minds what they see that we've done with the Sea of Thieves world.
I hope they love it. I really hope they love it, and I think they will, because I know if it were me, I'd be overjoyed by it. So I hope people feel the same.
Whenever Monkey Island comes back, it's always like this joyous reunion. You know, it's what it is. It's a reunion, because it's like every time it happens, we're getting the band back together again, and we get to come together and jam for a few months and have a great time.
The thing I'm probably most looking forward to is for players who haven't experienced Monkey Island yet to experience this world for the very first time, understand what makes it so special and why it is so beloved. I can't wait until July 20th when the first tale goes live and we just get to see the reaction. And I hope people have an incredible time, because we've just poured our heart and soul into this experience.